I'll be moderating today's session. Today you're going to hear from two of our speakers, Michelle, who is the founder and chief executive at Street Paws, and Rosie, who is an impact facilitator at the University of Birmingham. Each will discuss how their organization has worked to shift housing standards and regulatory frameworks so that people are not forced to choose between a home and their companion animal. Jodie's going to help guide us through the interactive parts of this presentation and provide links in the chat, so be on the lookout for those. And with that, I will turn it over to Michelle and Rosie. Thank you.
So we're going to do a presentation on from campaign to system change in pet inclusive housing and homelessness accommodation. The session description is: housing systems often unintentionally exclude people experiencing homelessness because they have pets, despite the well-documented role companion animals play in safety, stability, and engagement. This session explores how advocacy, policy engagement, and cross-sector collaboration can shift housing standards and regulatory frameworks so that people are no longer forced to choose between a home and their companion animal. Okay, so this will be the first interactive part, except I can't see your answers. So if you can, somebody can be my eyes for the chat.
Okay, I can see it now, Jodie.
Oh, you can? Okay, perfect.
Go for it. I couldn't
So
unmute,
you can see on the screen the different faces of the dogs. We just want to know at the start of the session how positive you are feeling about pet inclusion right now. If you can pick a picture that represents how you feel and pop the number in the chat along with a short reason why you've picked that picture.
And we've got lots of numbers coming in. So number 1, number 8, a few number 8s. Number 6, funny, cheer people up. Number 8 seemed to be quite. Is that because it's the end of the day? That might be. Yeah, I'm just worn out with the with just keeping going. Some 3s. So yeah, just it feels like this might be the end of the day. So the people have heard a lot. So number 8, definitely feel a bit defeated in my area. 3, lots of great work happening and much to do. Very overwhelming information because nobody listens, even though I scream loudly, and I can get that. So yeah, number 1, a lot of kind of screamings going on, and please listen to what we're saying, and banging my head against the wall. So and a lot of worn out. So yeah, thank you everyone. That's great.
Thank you. So there are 3 things that we'd like you to take away from this session. The first one being a clearer understanding of how housing policy and regulatory standards unintentionally exclude people with pets and where meaningful change is possible. The second one is an insight into how strengths-based thinking reframes pet inclusion from compliance to system design. These all sound like really big words right now, but by the end, it will be much clearer. So don't shut off. It's okay. And third one is practical strategy, lived experience, cross-sector collaboration, and strategic advocacy to embed pet inclusion as the norm. I am now going to hand you over to Michelle, who's the founder of Street Paws.
So, welcome everybody. And who are Street Paws? We work for a future where homelessness never separates people and their pets, and where compassion never comes with conditions. Too many people are denied shelter or support simply because they have a pet. No one should be asked to give up the one being who has never let them down. We're here to make sure no one has to make that choice. Street Paws believes compassion should never come with conditions. We work with councils, hostels, vets and support services across the north and northeast of England to make pet-friendly accommodation simple, supported and achievable. Our Pet Champion scheme equips hostels and temporary accommodation providers with the tools, knowledge and confidence they need to welcome pets and their people. From accessible veterinary care to specialist training and policy advocacy, we open doors and remove barriers so people and their pets can access safety and stability together. Street Paws is driving a national movement to make pet-friendly support the norm, not the exception. We challenge outdated policies, unite homelessness and animal welfare sectors, and campaign for fair, equal access to housing and help for every person and every pet. Together, we're building a future where no one is left outside. Next, please. So the system problem. What we're talking about might initially sound like a pet policy issue, but in reality, it's something much deeper. It's about how systems are designed and who those systems are designed for. No One Left Outside is a national campaign led by Street Paws calling for pet inclusive housing to become the norm rather than the exception. This isn't simply about recognising that pets matter. It's about understanding how policy, language, regulatory standards and commissioning frameworks quietly determine whether someone is included or excluded from support. When we talk about exclusion, it's important to be clear that this isn't usually about bad intent. Housing systems are built around assumption, and one of those assumptions is that the standard tenant does not have a companion animal. That assumption shapes everything. It influences blanket no pet policies, risk-averse interpretations of housing standards, and commissioning frameworks that don't even consider the presence of animals. None of this feels dramatic or deliberately harmful. It's administrative, it's procedural, but its impact is profound. Next. For many people experiencing homelessness, a pet is not an accessory or an added complication. A pet can be protection at night, a source of emotional regulation in the midst of a trauma, a daily structure built around feeding, walking, and routine, and sometimes, quite simply, a reason to stay alive and remain engaged. When we describe pets as a barrier to housing, we fundamentally misunderstand their role. In many cases, they are the very thing sustaining stability, responsibility, and connection. Next. Exclusion doesn't only happen at the hostel door. It happens much earlier in the wording of policies and standards. It happens in regulatory frameworks that are silent on pets, in risk models that default to prohibition rather than management, and in commissioning documents that fail to anticipate the reality of people's lives. When standards are vague, risk-averse interpretation fills the gap, and then the safest interpretation is often to say no. Next. No One Left Outside was born from a realisation that providing direct support where vital is not enough if the system itself keeps reproducing the same barrier. If people are still being forced to choose between a roof over their head and the companion who provides safety and emotional survival, then the issue is not individual, it's structural. The campaign therefore focuses on creating clarity within regulatory standards, establishing clear expectations around reasonable pet policies, and positioning pet inclusion as a homelessness prevention measure rather than a discretionary kindness. This is about shifting from an exception to expectation. Next. I will pop the link in the chat, or you can scan the QR code to sign the petition. Unfortunately, that's only for UK citizens, I'm afraid. However, you're very welcome to share the petition across your networks. Thank you.
So I'm going to take over from Michelle. So hi, everybody. I'm Rosie, and I work at Birmingham University in the United Kingdom for a partnership called Impact. And it's I'll go on to explain a bit more about Impact in a minute, but we understand that basically our work is how we change things is system wide. So Michelle's talked quite a lot about how she engages on a policy level, but on a national policy level, but she's also part of this impact project. So in how to really deliver change. Next slide, please, Jodie. So impact is part of as I said, a UK-wide programme which focuses on turning evidence into real-world change in adult social care. And the project sits within that and looks specifically at pet inclusion in homelessness accommodation. Next slide, Jodie. So a little bit about impact. So impact brings together research, policy and practice partners across the UK and is aimed not just to generate evidence, but to apply it in ways that really shift the system. So it's a 15 million UK centre funded by the Economic and Social Research Council and Health Foundation in the United Kingdom, and led by Professor John Glaspie at the University of Birmingham, where I'm based. But it has a broader consortium of lots of different universities across the UK, as well as other practice partners and other stakeholders, including people who draw on support and care and their carers. Next slide, please, Jodie. So just a bit about this project. So Impact runs change projects annually. So it's a year-long project, and host organisations apply basically to have a facilitator and a host to focus on a particular area of social care. So this project was particularly applied for by Newcastle University, who've done some recent research. Street Paws, you've heard from Michelle. Street Vets, Dogs Trust, as well, who are other pet charities in the UK and work in different areas of the UK. And our goal is really to shift the narrative away from a compliance-based lens, as you've heard Michelle talk about, which kind of really frames this as a problem, rather than a strength-based perspective, which really highlights what's strong rather than what's wrong. And as a facilitator for Impact, I'm supporting the change by developing an aspirational yet practical policy template designed to guide those conversations across commissioners and providers and other people. And we're also developing a case study film to show the art of the possible in an area called Manchester in the UK, who is particularly got a really great approach to pet inclusion. Next, please, Jodie. So Impact always starts with evidence, and the evidence across the UK, but also internationally, is really consistent. So, and it shows that pets aren't a minor factor. They play a really significant role in people's lives, and they support, as Michelle's already talked about, mental health, provide companionship, influence, positive influence different people's behaviour in positive ways, and provide safety. But importantly, the same relationship can also lead to exclusions because systems are not designed to accommodate it. So, yeah, this slide just outlines all those different areas. Next slide, please, Jodie. And when we talk about a strength-based shift, we're moving really from a compliance lens that says that we might be able to, we'll try to, we'll look at risk first, we have consistent bans, and it's often down to individual discretion, to moving to recognizing strengths that pets bring. So they bring connection and structure and motivation and engagement, and they also we want to move from kind of managing people to really supporting people, and moving from bans to management. So we've heard from different providers how banning pets also can lead to a whole lot of other issues. So people can often, people will take pets in if they desperately want to stay with their pets. They'll sneak pets into accommodation, and then if there's any problems, that isn't, it hasn't been thought about. So the idea is that we think about how do we design systems around real life, around whole people. Next slide, Jodie. So we're co-designing a strength-based model, and working with commissioners and providers, pet charities, homelessness charities, and people with lived experience. And we've been co-designing this work with online workshops, face-to-face, and it's an ongoing iterative process. So the idea about that we continually review and we continually share back, and we continually find ways for everybody to input in, and that can be tricky sometimes. The people that especially people with lived experience who have really fed into the process at the beginning, move on quite quickly, and it can be quite difficult. But I think we just have to keep trying and finding different ways to involve people. Next slide, please, Jodie. So we've done a number of workshops, and we're at the point where we've co-designed our strength-based model, and we have four different strength-based areas. So connection and belonging, and recognition, motivation, hope and future focus, purpose, care and responsibility, and grounding, stability and resilience. And these are our strength-based areas, and under them sit a whole load of strengths that you can actually see. So so in motivation, hope and future focus, it may be that one of the strengths under that is that you can see somebody beginning to plan, and that may be planning hour to hour, not necessarily week to week and month to month, but just beginning to make some really positive plans for their future. So the idea is that we want to develop a strength-based model that you can actually see, so that commissioners and everybody can actually see the benefit of supporting a strength-based model, because all of the things that we hope we can build and support people with to move out of homelessness services, we know that pets and dogs in particularly bring these strengths and bring all those things that will actually help people move beyond homelessness services, which has got to be our ideal, to stop people, to kind of stop people bringing those strengths and then try and reintroduce them is kind of nonsensical. So how can we do that right at the beginning? Next slide, please, Jodie. So if policy opens the door to practice, and this is where Michelle's work particularly is looking at that policy area, then practice must know what to do next. So we need to get people ready, and we need to translate strengths into structural implications. So standards that expect pet inclusion, risk management that's proactively managed, and cross-sectional protocols. So everybody working together and understanding where in the system they play their part, and by not playing their part, how that has implications on the whole of the system. And that commissioning kind of sets the tone and drives that and recognises that value, and that accommodation design anticipates pets. And so it really is a starting place that we expect it, rather than we try and work around it. Thank you. I think I'm just finishing off this on our thanks, Jodie. I missed this bit off. So pet inclusion is not a special arrangement, as we said. It should be business as usual, and this is where advocacy and system redesign meet, and we need to really bring the two together and look at it from a system-wide angle. Thank you. I'm going to pass back to Michelle.
So the campaign in action, how we work. So we're going to identify policy entry points, engaging regulators and decision makers, make them part of the journey, coalition building, strategic use of lived experience, and translating frontline experience into policy language. Next.
Okay. So I'm going to put a link in the chat. It's already posted, but I'll post it now so you can catch up. If you can see that. If you could follow the link, it will take you to 5 short questions. I think it's 5. We will be using the responses as part of our research, just so we can say we have your consent. And it'll inform a report that we're putting together. It should only take you like 1 or 2 minutes. Back to your dogs. How is everyone feeling about pet inclusion after hearing from 2 people who have been working very hard to make sure it's happening? If you can put your the number again in the chat and we'll have a look at that, please. Okay, well, that's a much better response than we started out with.
Yeah, people have been really kind to us. But you know, at the end of the day, we love kind. We're happy to go with kind.
Yeah, there's no 7s, so
and no 8s, completely off it. And the 3, yeah, hopeful, perfect. Yeah, no, that's great.
Brilliant.
So what we're talking about today might sound like a pet policy issue, but at its heart, it's really about people and about how systems we build either include them or quietly push them out. So our focus is on clarity, clearer expectations around reasonable pet policies, clearer regulatory language, and a shared understanding that pet inclusion is not a special favour, but part of good homelessness prevention. Because if policy opens the door, the question becomes, are we designing systems that truly reflect people's real lives? This is where advocacy meets design and where lasting change begins.
Lovely.
I'll also put these links in. These are for Rosie, so I'll let Rosie finish. But I will put these links in the chat as well so you can access them, because I'm aware you can't click on the screen.
Yeah, thanks, Jodie. No, and these are just our contact details. I think we've Michelle's and Street Paws are on the next slide. So if anybody wants to follow anything up, then do feel free. And thank you for listening. And I think are we coming to you, Jessica, for questions?
Yes, my camera isn't it's not letting me be disabled, but I'm happy to read off some of the questions that have come through the presentation. Great job, ladies. I think the message you had is really important, and thank you for the amazing work that you're doing in the UK. So the first question we have is, what is one policy change that has made the biggest impact in creating pet inclusive housing? And how can other communities start pushing for that change?
Do you want to answer that, Rosie, or do you want me to?
If you start, Michelle, you're probably in a better position.
I think we're not on the policy change part in the UK at the moment. This is what we're trying to really push for. But there has been a general shift in perception from commissioners and from our local government departments, recognising, I guess, that pets are really important. And until you include pets into any homeless solution, then you're not going to end homelessness, without that inclusion. So there seems to be a slight shift nationally in certain pockets of the UK, which are really taking this on board. What we're trying to do with the impact study and with the research that's going on in the background, is to try and bring that as a national change. But I think that's going to be a longer task for us here. At the minute, it's just a change in perception, I guess.
Yeah, I agree, Michelle. And I think there's something about, I mean, when, in impact in terms of using evidence to try and shift practice, when you actually say, say to people out loud that actually up to 25% of street homeless or people who've experienced homelessness have a pet, a majority have a dog, it suddenly becomes a much, people assume it's a very small number, and actually it's quite a big number. And because we don't always see those people because they've tried to access services over and over again, and that's been, and they've given up. So, and our the new national homelessness strategy, which came out from government in December, talked about halving homelessness and street homelessness by 50%. And when you kind of connect those two figures, and we're talking about trying to halve homelessness by 50%, but then there's 25% of people who are street homeless have a dog, and we're not accounting for them. That it just doesn't add up. So I think what we're trying to do is make a kind of story around that and real connect the dots, because I think people just see these things in isolation, and I think there's a big need for us to tell a whole narrative that kind of really helps people understand that this is a lot, a big population, and it's a big population that actually we want to, in terms of moving people through out of homelessness services, they're likely to move through from homelessness services a lot quicker because of the support that the dog brings. So I think we're trying to tell a different story, and I think that's, as Michelle said, and Michelle's been working on this a lot longer than me, and her and the other partners that we've been working with are, have been gently shifting things. And I think that's a real, I think that we, as you said, Michelle, we're beginning to see that gently. And I think it's about bringing it all together and trying to make it, a collective bigger voice in the UK.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think we see similar challenges here in the US. There's been a bit of research over the last few decades, for sure, focused on how the two systems would work more efficiently if they could work together. But getting to the policy piece is definitely a hurdle. And so getting beyond the sort of policy wonk space of it is a challenge. And I think building those stories and building that like timeline that you described will be transformational and hopefully making changes over there. Another question is, were there any key moments or turning points that have accelerated the progress in the campaign?
I guess it's just reiterating the issue, as Rosie's just said there, and creating a narrative that this is a real issue for people who have pets. I think unless you've experienced homelessness, you can't begin to understand the impact it has on your life. And just by the charities in the UK talking about this, we're taking it to Parliament to try and get the government to back the change as well, because I think until it comes from the top down and filters across to the local authority, then you're not going to really bring the real change that we're looking for, because we'd like to really put ourselves out of business, and the charity shouldn't exist. We shouldn't be here to support people who are homeless with pets. They should be supported automatically by, the other support services, the local authority. there shouldn't be any need for a street pause. So effectively, we're trying to support people from the worst point of their lives with a pet alongside them, and make that normality, not the kindness of a hostile manager. And by taking it to our UK Parliament, we're hoping to bring that change.
Yeah. And I think, Jessica, in the work we've been doing with Impact, the biggest thing that's kind of shifted our thinking is because we started off talking about pet acceptance and in homelessness provision, but going out and talking to people with lived experience, both on the streets and in accommodation, who are pet inclusive. The one thing that I think nearly everybody I spoke to said was, I wouldn't be here without my pet. And suddenly that takes it from a real, that actually we're causing people harm. How can we be providers of services that are there to support people and then cause them harm and their pets harm? So I think the real shift into that, what's wrong rather than what's wrong, was really driven by people with lived experience, because it was such a shocking statement that that actually this is these are it's a lifeline. I know all the people on this who are attending your conference will have they'll know all of this, but I think that when you kind of couch it in those terms, for people who don't get it, they can begin to feel it. Well, actually, what are we doing to people? What are we doing to people? And I think that that whole kind of what's thinking about what's strong rather than what's wrong is just turning things on their head, and that the idea that actually what we just need to provide is a roof for people is nonsensical, because we're actually stopping people moving on and moving out of their tough times into times, into getting on with their lives, and we're actually putting up barriers. So
no, yeah, I completely understand what you mean. I think everybody has had an experience where they see somebody who's unhoused with a pet, but somehow can disassociate that when you're trying to affect change, and they don't necessarily think of the humanity attached to those experiences, that person. And so sharing people's lived experience and like reminding the policymakers, decision makers about the real life impacts that it can have on individuals and therefore the collective community, it can make such a difference. So that's fantastic. Another question came in, and I think we have just time for maybe one or two more. Do you have any champions in the political system? And if so, how did that come about, and how has it been helpful? And how helpful has it been?
Champions in the political system, not yet. Areas that are champions, definitely. I know Rosie's already talked about Manchester, in the northwest of England. They are by far leading the way on this. And, we've worked in Manchester Street Pause as charity for 9 years now. And at the beginning, there was a real resistance to pet acceptance. There was a generalization that people who were homeless shouldn't have a pet with them, that they were using them for tools, for begging purposes, that they couldn't look after the welfare of the animal. And we've worked really hard in the area for the last 9 years, and now we're working really closely with the local authority and the local government, because they actually now see the benefit, and they actually see the bigger picture, that until they include the animals with the people, then they're not going to help people to move from the situation they're in. So we're using that now. We're using that area now as a big positive. We've been working closely with commissioners in the area, and staff in the hostels, along with the Impact project, and those voices have transferred into the framework that and the policy that we're going to produce at the end of Rosie's work, with the impact project. And we're hopeful that that framework and policy in support from that one local government area can transfer nationally across the UK as an example of best practice.
Yeah, and coming to this, last year, that change, that shift. I know you've been working, like you said, 9 years, but that's a long time, but you can really see it in Manchester, and I think that's real credit to you. And I think the real point, because part of the impact project, we spoke to commissioners across the country, but the commissioners have now put in their new tender documents for homeless services as they've gone out to tender that all providers must be pet inclusive, which is really massive. It's the best example that we've seen in the UK. So, and I think that comes from years of your work, Michelle.
I agree.
Not just me, but yeah. And I think the other areas have to be shown how easy it can be to include pets, because I think there's still a common misconception that it's going to be just problems and failures, and actually it's not, because we know we can prove once you get an animal into a project, that animal quickly becomes part of the project's family. And support for the other residents as well, because that's what animals do.
Yeah.
Very true. I'm sort of piggybacking off of that. Have you all been able to collaborate with other aligned organizations in your work, or is this a growing issue, or are there just still a handful of you championing this in your space?
No, in terms of the work that we've been doing for impact, we've been connecting with lots of different organisations, so homelessness organisations and other pet welfare organisations, so such as Battersea Cats and Dogs Home, and there's a big network organisation in the UK called Homeless Link, who are an amazing organisation. And actually, when we reach out to people and organisations, they just say yes. And I always say, because what people have been doing is kind of ploughing through things on their own a lot of the time, and bringing people together. And a lot of this work is just bringing people together and collaborating. But actually, people are really, they're really, really open, and they just say yes, which has just been a really pleasant surprise. And it just shows how important it is to people. But other organizations, so if you're a homelessness organization, you kind of know that it's important, but you don't quite know where to go with it and how to reach out to, and how to connect up with all the other areas. So I think some of it is about just joining the dots and keep reaching out to people and building the network. And we've kind of built a nice network of beginning to providers, commissioners, welfare, pet welfare, pet charities, so I think there's a it feels like, and I know Michelle, you've said this very often, but it feels like things are just beginning to give after years and years of work, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And for the petition side, for the charity, and we're trying to make a change through our government system, I've been spending the last month or so just connecting with the charities and commissioners and welfare services, Association of Cat and Dog Homes, Homeless Link, and every organisation. I think there's probably about 12 to 15 of them, have all backed, and willing to add their voice of support for what we're trying to push through, because you can't do this on your own. It has to be everybody in the sector, but everybody recognises the importance of pets now, and everybody's willing to, to put their name and their voice to achieve what we're trying to achieve as well, which is excellent. It's brilliant. And I think it's a true testament of all the good work that all the other organisations have done as well. And we just need to try and, with the impact study project, we just need to try and push this over the line and make a national change in the UK. And that would be, you can't put a measure on that for anybody who's experiencing homelessness or unhoused with a pet, because they're not going to be asked as a blanket policy now to give up that pet to access any support, because of all the work that everybody's putting in, which it's amazing.
That's incredible. I think, yeah, that mind shift is a massive victory in itself. And so, of course, yeah, if a policy change at the national level is the gold standard, and I know you guys will get there. I can tell that you've dedicated so much time and to shift that many people's understanding of the importance of this issue, because I think that's a hurdle oftentimes, at least it has been here. We have one more question right now. Can you share some of your biggest lessons learned in your work to change regulatory frameworks? And are there things that you tried that didn't go expected? And what are your biggest victories?
I think first we saw a gap because they're refreshing the standards for social housing, and we thought we could just jump in there and make a really slight change to their policy to roll this out nationally, but we've missed that deadline, sadly, because things like that take forever, and it's not due to be published till late autumn 26, but we're too late already, beginning of January to affect that. So we're just now pushing it in with Plan B, which is to gain as much attention for the issue, gain as much support for the issue, and to gain as much support from our MPs across the UK, who can then take this to the government. And the next step would be to have a debate within our government, to which the government will have to provide an official answer. But as I've said before, I think there is a real shift and there's a real appetite, because I think they've realised that until they tackle this issue with the pets and make that normality, they're not going to hit the targets or end homelessness as they say they're going to do, or half it by whatever date in the future. So yeah, I think the main thing is just to keep at it, and I think that's my message for everybody. Don't be disheartened. It can be disheartening, but try and get as much support as you can from other organisations and bodies, and as much within local, central and national government, to try and make a change, and just don't give up.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's a fantastic way to wrap up. If you have any final words that you'd like to leave the audience with, otherwise, thank you for joining us. The session is nearly concluded, unless I want to give a chance for Michelle, Rosie, Jodie to give any final words, anything.
I've added the QR code under the Q&A. Under the question, can you show the QR code again? I've managed to upload the image of it. And thank you for all your responses on the interactive section. It's actually really interesting, everyone's different answers.
No, just thank you for giving us the time to talk about our work, because we love it, and clearly it's lovely to talk about it, and we know it's the end of the day, so we're really grateful that people came along.
And I'd be really interested if anybody wants to reach out to hear about experiences or challenges that you're having in the US as well. I'd be really interested in hearing those challenges as well.
I've also put Michelle's and Rosie's email in the chat, so you can contact them straight away.
Yeah. Grateful for that. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. The session is now concluded and the video will end. And we welcome you to click the next session in the link found on the agenda. Thanks, everybody.
Chasing